need to be higher than me, but still.
3
I'm
feet,
going
4
to call
feet?
the
Yeah.
meeting to order. Roll call, appointment of alternates. Charles, that's just not right. So if you would sit for one of our vacancies. Public hearings, we have none. Old business applications, none. Any new business, receipt of applications?
No new applications, Madam Chair.
All right, so we move on to general commission business. Approval of minutes of the last meeting. Do we have any changes?
The one thing, I did have one question on them, and I thought was mentioned that the actual scheduling of it was done, that the cost, there was a cost consideration in the scheduling of the fire, of the dredging of the pond, and that didn't seem to be reflecting that we were scheduling it then because it was a,
I think because they'd received the funds for it.
and they
Yes.
received the funds, and because we were doing it when the contractor had time to do it, as opposed to when we wanted it done, that they were giving us a break on the price as well.
Yeah.
I just thought that the cost aspect of it should be reflected in the minutes.
All right, shall we?
Could you just clarify the line, is that under?
It's not in here, so.
Yeah, there was no mention of it, and there was some,
So if you could,
It would be under
Jill,
the
if you could
first.
give me just
under
some
the old-
guidance under, because
old
that
business.
discussion goes from line 34 through line 59.
It's probably about line 55, it would probably be after line 55, because that's when Mr. Kowalski was explaining a little in further details.
yeah, or it was in here, either 44, the timing, so to avoid the impact of species, but we were doing it earlier
Okay, yeah,
because
that would be a good
of,
place.
earlier because of the availability, the contractor was giving us a price and the funds had been approved.
So it's like in lines 57 to 58, like right there.
I actually thought it would be, I don't even remember, I thought it was before that, but actually don't. Yeah,
Yeah, we had that
whatever.
discussion that if they could plan it out a little bit, we could accommodate the
Yes.
environmental impact.
Yes, but then the reason that was, that they had selected the time was,
And Madam Chair, just for clarity, and I can check with Mr. Glidden when he's back in the office, but you were looking to adjust or add a statement associated with the discussion that the work is going to occur earlier due to scheduling and a price break, and the funds are in hand. That'd be a fair statement?
exactly, yep.
Okay, thank you. And we'll look at in the context of between line 44 and line 54.
All right, so, we'll just file those as amended.
You have a motion
Do
and a
we-
second?
do we-
You're amending them, yes?
Yes, all right, so we have a motion.
I move we accept them as amended.
All right.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And
Thank you.
opposed? Okay. On to Simsbury Meadows.
Again, thank you for having me here tonight in Mike's absence. It's, I
Nice to
think
see
the
you
last time I
again.
appeared before you, and have appeared before you many times, is April of 2017. So to the new members, welcome.
Thank you.
My name is Jamie Rabbit. I'm the Director of Planning and Community Development. So Mike has been assigned to you for the last year and will continue in that role as your staff. With regards to Simsbury Meadows, I had an opportunity just this afternoon to brief the new town manager, Maria Capriola, with regards to regulatory issues associated with Simsbury Meadows. Just as a quick reminder, Maria is our new town manager, and she has been here for 6 weeks and a day. So 31 working days, right in the middle of a budget season. So based on our meeting today and discussion regarding the status of various projects that have been undertaken at Simsbury Meadows, she wanted to continue this discussion with town council at one of our regularly scheduled meetings with him, being Bob G. Crescenzo, March 29th. So we have this in roughly 2 weeks, a little over 2 weeks. I would hope to have an update for you on or at your April 3rd meeting. I will either be here personally to update you, it could be council, could be with me or with Mike, but again, I hope to have some update with regards of status of the items from, we had Fireworks Road, Dog Park, parking lot, and I know I'm gonna leave a few without looking at my notes quickly, but we'll walk through the status of those projects. And bioswale with the soccer field. I know some of them we've ticked off, location of the PAC office with the permitting of the buffer and grass strip. So again, we'll go through those and potentially, hopefully, have a course of action for outstanding items. And speaking with the chair, since I am here tonight, if you would like, I can do a quick overview of the status of some of the developments in town. And if I miss something, feel free to ask me a question, if that's okay, Madam Chair.
Yes, that would be good.
If you bear with me, I'm going to try and go somewhat in order, starting from the Avon Town Line on Route 10, headed north to the Granby Town Line. Starting at the Avon Town Line, we have Mark Greenberg's original property, which was sold to Eli Pintal from Garden Homes out of New Jersey, where he's developing residential units. That is partially occupied but still under construction. And that's just on the Avon Town Line on the east side, just as you cross between the town line and Eversource. Mark Greenberg owns the remainder of that property. Eversource and a small 8-acre parcel to the north of Eversource. We have had some discussions about the development of that property, but we do not have any permits pending on that. As we head a little bit further north, we have the former Hartford property, 200 Hop Meadow, which in essence is two parcels, north and south. The south side, which is approximately 100 acres, was the home of the office complex. That has been raised and is a prepped gravel pad site. There may be some minor work there to remove some additional metal from the superstructure that was left behind by a prior contractor, but for all intents and purposes, that site has been, in essence, mothballed until future development occurs there. The north part, which is part of the Talcott Ridge development, which was done by the Silverman Group, that's the 40-acre parcel. They just received their letter of approval from the state of Connecticut, the old State Traffic Control Authority, which is now OSTA, which is the Office of State Traffic Authority. That letter is a approval letter that leads to a certificate. The certificate requires them to perform certain activities, primarily posting just a little over $1.4 million financial surety associated with the work. We anticipate that perhaps being done in the next month or two, and construction would follow after that surety was posted. By state law, a town cannot release building permits or foundation permits until that certificate is issued. So we are sitting on plans for the assisted living facility. Those were reviewed in the fall, but we could not release those. And we have been sitting on foundation plans for two of the large stacked flats, which are 28 and I think 30 units, and 4 of the townhouse type units, which are between 4 units or 5 units. So again, that should break ground late winter, early spring. That's what we're anticipating. Abigail's was approved to do some renovations on their building, primarily associated with upgrades to their bathroom to the east, so the river side of that. Mitchell Auto Group has just finished their Phase 1 renovations of their auto dealership associated with Quick Lane and the Volvo dealer. They have a Phase 2, which is an upgrade to their service area, which in essence is a drive-through. So you drive into a building, drop your car off, Someone will take your car from there, and then you depart through the service area. We're hoping that occurs this summer. We've approved renovations to Asian Meadow at Simsbury Square. That went through the zoning commission. That was an expansion on the road side or the west side of that main building, adding additional bar space and table space, as well as a better airlock to the restaurant and vestibule. Denny's finished their work late fall, and as well as Table 570. As a reminder for Table 570, that was approved as 2 restaurant pads. It's our understanding that the owner success on this property has brought him to the realization that it would be extremely difficult to open the second approved pad as a restaurant because of parking limitations. I don't know if anyone's driven by there or been there on a Friday night or Saturday night when the parking lot's full. So if a second restaurant were to go there, that would make it extremely difficult for either one of them to be successful. So he's looking at parking arrangements and options available to him. The Ensign Mansion at 690 Hop Meadow, that was sold. The new owners are working with Union Studios out of Providence, Rhode Island, on the redevelopment of that site. If Union Studios may ring a bell or be a familiar name, they also worked on the schematics and sketch plans for Mike Gerard's property on Iron Horse. So that's Jeremy Lake and Donald Powers out of Union Studios. Bank in the center of town, Bank of America was approved to do some ADA upgrades as well as landscaping upgrades on the southern side of their building. They did some in the front last year, but this fall through the winter they were approved to attack the southern side. Fiddler's Green has opened a new event center and their mystery and puzzle room and the former residential portion of that property, the former Victorian. So that is open. In approving that application, the commission worked with the Board of Selectmen and solidified an easement arrangement for their dumpster location, where the landowner for Fiddler's Green constructed the dumpsters, has responsibility to remove trash from the dumpsters, but the town will maintain them because the Eno Hall facilities will be utilizing their dumpsters. So it was a private-public partnership associated with that. We have a few new tenants in town, Hello Lovely, leaping into arts, just small transitions into vacant or just vacant space. Plank Hill Road, Dr. Hope opened a new dentist office this past fall. With regards to Andy's Center, the Iron Horse Pub was opened this past fall and introduced new outdoor dining area and indoor space as well. If anyone has not been in there, even to eat, I would recommend you at least go in just to see the fit out of that space where you don't realize you're in a basement. I think the owner did a fantastic job utilizing that basement space. Tom Ryan has been working very hard at Simsbury Town Shops with regards to new multiple tenant changes and new businesses coming into that. And he is working very hard to fill the space that is vacated by Little City Pizza and their move to Avon. So hopefully in the next 2 to 4 months we'll have an application to fill that space. St. Mary's Church at 946 Hop Meadow, I think that application came through you for their drainage impacts. They are in final design and analyzing final cost structures, as well as working with the DOT on some of their encroachment issues associated with the right-of-way. One of the major factors that is coming out of the Department of Transportation is that the gate on the northern drive will need to be removed, because DOT feels that it's a barrier to traffic and free flow on Hop Meadow. If you turn in and the gate's closed, there's no way for you to get out other than to back on the Hot Meadow. We're still working on the revitalization of the mobile station. We've had some inquiries to the redevelopment of that site or reopening it as a gas and convenience center. As we head north of 315 in the Granby Town line, we have the Old Wells Restaurant, and that is available and on the market for redevelopment or in its current use as a restaurant. 1225 Hot Meadow, which is Sunrise Convenience and the dry cleaner and paint store. Just to that north, the zoning commission approved a new Dunkin Donuts. If people have noticed that the Dunkin Donuts has closed in the Andes Shopping Center, the developer for that store in the north end owns 3 franchises in town: Weetog, Andes, as well as the existing one at Steve Antonio's parcel. Those will be combined in a new location. The new store, DRB, as well as staff worked very diligently with the owner of that parcel, as well as the developer of the Dunkin Donuts, to come up with a New England style prototype. No orange awnings, no orange, again, there's corporate insignia associated with their sign, but it's very subtle white and earth tone colors on the building with clapboards and flower boxes and more colonial style windows versus a plate glass or plain glass window.
So is the big new one in Weetog going away?
No, Weetog stays. There'll be north and south end Dunkin Donuts right now.
Okay, but so the Andes goes away and
Andes.
the Antonios goes away?
Yes. Andes already has closed.
Right, and then,
The one on the north end will close upon the opening of the new one. That's our understanding. With regards to Big Y, we get this question often. That site is available. It is on the market. It is being listed at $2.6 million for redevelopment. Riverbend LLC has 75 acres just to the north of the Big Y site that is also available. Dorset Crossing and Castor Bridge Crossing, there are some vacant parcels there, and there's some interest in the redevelopment of that commercial space. So you have the inline commercial on the northern perimeter of that property. There are 3 pads in front of that between the access road and where urgent care used to be. The bowling alley has been on the market, and it's our understanding that it may have sold at a auction in the last week or 2. We're waiting for confirmation on that. So, and we're not clear whether it will be continued to operate as a bowling alley or there are other redevelopment plans for that site. And 1610 Hot Meadow Street, which is the last development owned by Frank Grillo on the easterly side of Hot Meadow, where say we have the Thai restaurant as well as a package store. They just reopened or retrofitted a building for a hair salon that's actually in Granby. So we got a lot of phone calls regarding the development of that site, but that portion of that site is in Granby. So that takes you down the main corridor. There is a little activity elsewhere in town with regards to single-family development and the redevelopment of some other parcels, but that takes a quick run at what's happening along the major route in town. Does anybody have any questions?
What's happening?
Oh, and just one update with regards to Deepwater Wind. That was, again, approved by the Siting Council. The decision has been appealed by the town and also appealed by a group of abutters. And in essence, we're all in a holding pattern right now.
How long would that holding pattern, how long would they process?
Again, it runs through the legal process with regards to return of record and briefs, And in that interim, it is my understanding that the town is talking to Deepwater Wind with regards to what would be necessary to settle any outstanding issues.
It's nice to hear what's going on in town. All right, thank you. Do any of the commissioners have any questions for Jamie while he's here?
Actually, just a quick question. Is there anything going on in the West Simsbury, like across from St. Catherine's, that parcel that's up there?
St. Catharines.
Sort of St. Catherine's, so past, if you go up,
Up by the Grange?
Yeah, just past the
yeah,
Grange.
That little, over, across from the post office, West
A little
Simsbury.
shopping complex?
Yeah.
In the shopping complex, there's been some changing
Yeah.
of businesses within there, and there was a change in ownership of, I believe, the barber shop, and we've been working with them on a permitting process associated with their sign. But no ground-up new development.
just curious.
All right. So we look forward to the April 3rd meeting.
Okay,
Um,
thank you.
And that moves us on to item 3, forest management, public discussion and workshop. Okay, first off, do we have any comments from the public? John, any?
Waiting with bated breath.
Aren't we all? All right. All right. Charles, shall we start with,
So maybe just refresh what our goal is here again.
we were going to try group editing, which I
Okay.
hate. You know, we do have an alternate thing. We can submit separate letters from each of us, instead of one from, I know, Dawn, you didn't feel we needed to send a letter at
Check
all.
with Helen to see if she has something to say before. we
Yes, that would be
start.
very good. Helen? Hello.
Oh.
Hello. We've now reached the forest management section of the discussion. We whizzed through this agenda. Is there anything you'd like to say for tonight?
Not to that subject, but may I just use this moment to remind you of the date of April 26th for the forum that we're having? And just, I think I mentioned it to you at the last meeting,
Yes.
or the one, but I just wanted the actual invitations, you'll be receiving them within the week.
Do we have a title?
Don't challenge me now.
No, it's okay. A topic.
Big trees, interesting to some,
That's all right.
let me
It's all right.
muck it up.
We'll wait for the,
Yeah,
invitation.
It's coming,
All
just
right.
save the date, it's a Thursday, April 26th.
All right, good, thank you. All right. So, I'll just say, I read your letter, I liked your letter. I thought it sort of summed up everything that needed to be said if we submit a letter as a group. How does everyone else feel?
I guess thinking about this, I keep coming back to the question of what is, in one sentence or two, what is the message that we're trying to send to the Board of Selectmen? What do we want them to do? Give me the elevator pitch, if you will, for this thing, because I think it's very hard. Charles's letter is lovely, but it's quite long.
Right.
I don't think most people in that sort of position read that much. It would need to be distilled down, but I think to kind of start thinking about this, we need to know where we're going. What's the bottom line?
Can I just add to that? I realize I'm a little bit late to the party here, so I don't have all the background other than what I've read and trying to catch up, but I think I'm focusing a little bit on the process and trying to figure out what our goal is and what we've been asked to do and what we need to do here. And as I'm reading it, I sort of see two tracks here. There's our task that we were asked to approve this one specific plan, which was the Onion Mountain Plan, if I'm correct.
If I may correct you, I don't think that is correct.
Okay,
The Board of
then
Selectmen approved the Onion Mountain Plan a long time ago.
Right.
And in fact, they put their money where their mouth is and approved paying the tree cutter to do the work. So the Onion Mountain plan is fully approved, and we have not been asked to do anything officially about that.
So, and I guess that's where I'm sort of struggling with, it looked like that it had gone to RFP, it was done, everything was done, and I didn't see what we were asked to do with that, other than to say if there's a problem with that didn't, that it was actually not going to fulfill the objectives that it was set out to fulfill, which is a different category, which is a problem, one set of problems. And then there was another track of sort of an overall general that we don't have, that the sort of statement of the commission's goal of what we attempt to do with our forests now is too narrow, and doesn't really, and we believe we need to broaden our scope and how we sort of address all of our forests in general. But that seemed to be sort of, the two seem to be conflated, but yet in process, I'm not sure they should be. So that's where I'm struggling a little bit.
I suppose somehow it got to us. Somehow Onion Mountain came to us because
Onion
it had been a
Mountain.
while since it had been approved, and they wanted our opinion.
It came to us, I carried the message back
Yes.
from Open Space.
Yes.
And the question was simply, is the approval you guys gave, and the approval we gave, you'll recall, was not a broad conservation approval, it was a narrow wetlands and watercourses approval. Is that still good? That was the question.
How long, we gave the approval in the inland wetlands, but we never really had a discussion from a conservation point of view, since we wear two hats.
Yes,
We might not have been asked for it, but we have given our opinions on things before without being asked.
No, that's
Yes.
quite true. And we had a good presentation by Eric Hansen. It really went a bit beyond the wetlands aspects. But the question was, what were we asked to do? And the answer is, we were not asked to give a conservation judgment
So
about it.
is it not possible then to sort of do what we were asked to do and say whether that it was, and yet still, if we want to, go on and say that since looking at this, we want to go moving forward, so this is, yes, still good, unless we think that there's some flaws with it, which
Well, I
I
think-
understand there's some soil, some problems with the actual work that we may have questions over.
Well, we had also started off discussions saying, is this exactly what we want to do? Although the plan was well-written and it addressed what the town asked for, and the wetlands aspect is as good as it gets for logging, there was a time, that we took the time to step back and say, yes, that plan is good, but is there something we should be looking at beyond that? And is this the best thing? Is this too much management for that particular site? There are a lot of things that are recommended in that management plan. Do we have to do all of them? And it seemed prudent to do it before the activity was actually started. And to give some thought, we had a public input, and we had a lot of discussion amongst ourselves, saying that perhaps the plan is premature.
Or that it was, that as we looked at that one plan, we looked at the other 3 or 4 forest plans, and we saw, well, they all had, similar aspects. They were all kind of geared towards a slot that said, well, we can cut down some trees and do stuff here. And so it wasn't clear at the time whether you might cut down trees in Belden Park or Belden Forest to pay for what was going on in Belden, whereas maybe the trees might be better if you're gonna come down in Onion Mountain to help what's going on in Belden might be a better thing. So that was one of the discussions early on, is can you in fact look at one of these parcels and evaluate it just in its own? But I think if I was gonna answer Don's question, my answer, if we go back to all the work we've done on this and all the stuff we've been listening to, it, the action item back to the selectmen is that they really need to have a way to have good public discussion so that you can you can come up with a common, not everyone has to buy into the plan, but everyone has to feel like they've been heard. And I don't think everyone has felt like they've been heard in the different pieces, and there's different, there's different technical questions, there's just different, policy questions. And, yeah, you can improve this plan as it is now, but I think there's gonna be a lot of people that are gonna be unhappy that it wasn't looked at in a broader context. Having said that, I think if we set it up and do this well, 6 months from now, we can actually have plans that go forward, and for a lot of things. But you can't, if our discussion's any example of this, it's taken us a long time to figure out what's going on, without some amount of organization behind it, you'll never get anywhere. So you either just adopt whatever's in place, because that's what you have, and you won't be able to go forward. So my, the elevator speech I wanted to give to the selectmen was they need to think of a way to deal with that process. Now, they might come back and say, we have ways to do it. The Open Space Committee can do it, or people have given a lot of input, and we all know that. But I don't think it's hard to do that in a forum like this.
I agree.
And so that was my action item. So now if I was rewriting it myself, I would have made it much shorter and have that as the action item up in the front. But I was trying to give a broader perspective.
So in effect, your first action item is, please rescind your approval of the Undermountain Plan.
I think, please reconsider your approval.
Okay, so yes, you could claim it that way. I didn't know enough about what the actual status of it was.
Well,
Whether it's actually been officially approved or.
yeah,
Okay, so yeah, so in that case, so consistent with my letter, my action items would be, please do not move forward with the Onion Mountain Plan until a process has been set up to review these things as a group. Think about the forest plan in general. We have to think about, in the later, how you're going to do some sustainment work, the stewardship work. We need a way to actually handle the trail maintenance and things like that.
trail maintenance that's a Parks and Rec staff function. It's not done very well, but that, it seems to me, is a resource question.
Well, and one of the things that came through in each of these plans that we were evaluating was that one reason they wanted to cut down some of the trees, was to generate revenue so they could do some of the trail improvements. That was always.
I don't.
Okay, you think I'm twisting around?
You are indeed.
Okay. Okay, you're saying that they could.
It is a byproduct of cutting down the trees, which are cut down for a desired forest health purpose, that some money is generated.
Yes, you're absolutely right. That you could defray the cost. But then the question is how much costs were going to occur in each of these parcels. Like if you were deciding to, improve parking lots, there's a cost there. And so the question was whether we needed to have a lot of resources to do this from the town, from someplace, or did you need very little? I don't think any of those have been answered in a general way.
Well, am I mistaken? I thought, and I don't know everybody's name, but what I was reading in the documents that were sent, there was some discussion of costs. Would you do it differently and cut down different trees if you had different cost considerations? And the answer seemed to me, sort of in summary, maybe around the edges, but not really.
Yeah.
So I am left with, again, that a lot of people looked at this in the first place. They did come up with a plan. They put money into an RFP, into a plan to do this. Are we in a position to go back and undo that, which has already been done? And there's two, and I don't see any, I still have not seen anything that's going to, that doesn't fit with what we were tasked to do, other than there were some concerns about whether the cutting would actually conserve the soil and that's a different question if we don't think that it's getting at what it's actually doing.
There were technical questions.
Okay, so those we should ask and get confirmation of, but at the same time, to hold this up for this long is, I don't think,
Well,
you know what I mean? It doesn't mean we can't go forward and say we need a holistic program. We're approving this as to what has been set out in the first place, and it does what we said we would do. However, we think there are these things they can do, but it seems to me that there was questions already asked that they declined to come up, to
You seem to
do
be
that.
suggesting a sort of middle ground, which is to say, okay, you've approved the Onion Mountain plan. It didn't get done for some kind of mechanical reasons with the contractor. But you're not really committed to any of the others, some of which I think Belden in particular are still kind of in draft anyway. So one approach is to say, you know, we got a little embroidery on the edges of Onion Mountain, but we're, fundamentally good with it. We think if you're gonna undertake another property, there's probably some more stuff that we should do, some conversations that we should have.
Here's the things we would
before
like
you
to
get
think
into
about.
those.
Here's the things we would like to think about holistically for the town of Simsbury, for the region in general.
One of the
going
things
forward.
about your comment, Charles, that struck me was, I don't remember the exact phrasing, but it was in the passive voice. It was, this process has to be created, or something, these conversations have to be had. And I think if we're going to do this, you need to voice it and say, this person, we or somebody else needs to have this conversation.
Yeah, I agree. I think the conversation, well, so there's a lot of thoughts here. I agree, you can definitely do that. There was, the essence, where this started was, the essence, a year or so ago, there was a big technical debate about whether to achieve the goals of better health management of the forest, whether we should go and take trees down, which is the actual goal of this thing, to improve the health of the forest, was to take these things down in a targeted way, or whether there was whether you should just let it, at the other extreme, just let nature do it by itself, and, could you achieve the same results with less interference, or could you get better results? There was a lot of technical debate about that. We have not even gotten into the technical details. We've just been trying to say, what would you try to do? Because there's a long range of things you could do with this. And I do think that you need to have a forum where you can start to talk about that technical stuff. Since we couldn't come to an answer on the technical stuff, it sort of begs the question as to why would you proceed with this one plan right now?
Well,
And
I think
yeah.
they decided that that's what they want to do,
Well,
right?
yeah.
At the time that they approved the plan, they put the money, they went to RFP, they
Well-
want to maintain the diversity of the forest. There were definite goals that were in there in the RFP. And it doesn't mean we can't go forward and decide the goals are different with the other plans and even for Onion Mountain
But-
in the future. But I don't see any reason to say what they did in the past was incorrect.
It's not that we're saying it's incorrect, it's just, I think what we've had the discussion is saying that we wanted to pause and think about it, because it was approved in 2013. I think for the RFP, it really was only less than $1,500 to do the plan. So it's not a great expense on the town's part. Whatever we do in the forest, we should have good rationale for, other than a plan was done and we approved the plan before, so we need to go ahead with it. I think the forest works so slowly in changing that it's not going to make a difference. We've already waited 5 years. Another year, it's not going to change it. Other than just change for approving it because it came before us and we need to approve it, I don't think is really a strategy.
But we already did approve it, is the thing.
We did, but
already
we can
said we
recon-
did.
we-
We can reconsider
We
and
can
say,
reconsider.
well, they asked if we did it, and I don't have any grounds, I don't see any grounds to reconsider it, other than we
Well,
want to relook at everything.
To
There's
some
nothing,
interest, I'm sorry.
no, I was just going to say, everything in there, there's no real problem with it that is detrimental. There's nothing other than
well,
we
we-
want a different kind of growth of forest and some other people, and to give some people some voice.
Well, the bottom line from the speaker at Helen's program, I took to be, there are no wrong answers. There is nothing you have to do. You don't have to cut the trees, you don't have to leave the trees. There are a variety of things that can be done, all of which have rationales, and you can choose what to do. There isn't a wrong approach.
I didn't hear that, this is the one.
There isn't a wrong approach. However, when you look at the goals in the management plan, it says to improve, to preserve water quality. You can leave, as you said, you can leave the trees and the water quality will be totally unaffected. Logging does have impacts, even if it's just, isolated trees. It's not by no means a clear cut or, it's just a selective cut. But you still have to get in, equipment in there. It's going to have soil compaction. There is going to be damage of some sort, whether it's, best management practices will minimize it. But we did have questions when we looked at the goals and said, is this the best way of achieving those goals?
And I just want to, add one thing. The RFPs to inventory the properties were going to have to be done no matter what. I mean, we all considered that to have a good idea of what was in those properties, what the options were, was the next step.
Mm-hmm.
And so those being issued and being executed is great, because now we have an idea of how to evaluate that information once it came back. So I think we're in sort of that part of the process. The information came back. It was set up as a way that you could, they had the trees marked, you can go and execute it that way, but I think it's also a natural stopping point to say, do you want to just do work in Onion Mountain when you have a bunch of other parcels that may be connected or may not? I guess my biggest fear, this is my fear, maybe you guys can correct me, because I'm sort of new to the town, is that people don't feel like they've had a good voice in a lot of these things, it's going to make it drag on more. I guess I'm wondering whether, if we had the right kind of forums, can we just actually get through this pretty quick in 6 months or so?
So my thought, or the way I would look at it from a process, and maybe it's my legal background, but I'm kind of a stickler for process and the way it should be, is that we were tasked with this sort of more, you always look to the narrow, and we were tasked with this narrow thing of, do we still agree with this? And we don't, as long as we don't, there's no wrong answers, we don't see anything on the face of it that is problematic, but we do think, so it's not necessarily our decision to make. We can't go on and say the town, no, we want to take on this thing, correct? We want to go back holistically. We're asking the Board of Selectmen to make a commission. So I guess I'm looking at a middle ground where we say, on its face, this isn't necessarily, we have no problem and still approve it, but our recommendation would be too that we look at things more holistically, and we don't think that's done. And here's a process that we think should be. I don't know that it's to go back to the selectmen and just say you need to think about what you want from your forest. I think you really should. If you're going to go back to them, you should have a process about what you want to ask them to actually do, and give us the authority to do.
I tried in the letter to do that, though.
Yeah.
I tried to say, for this to work, the process has to address these issues. And, we've asked a little bit about what the philosophy statement is, and one of the key parts of it was to have public comment. It's very hard, even with this kind of organization, to have it set up so you have a good exchange of ideas on, it's hard to do these boards.
Yeah.
I'm worried, Don, I completely agree with you that you don't want to get into a paralysis by analysis situation. If I could be convinced that just approving this plan and saying yeah, there's anything really wrong with this thing, but you need to go off and think about some of these other things that you do, and we should set something up for that. I could be convinced that's an okay way to proceed, but why not just go back and look at the whole thing after some comments, then say, yeah, we're all set to do this. I just don't feel like everyone's had enough voice into this. Do you feel people had a good voice into this process in the past?
I think the citizens who care about this have presented themselves week after week and spoken to us. I think where we differ, Charles, is that I think you are more optimistic than I that we can achieve an overall agreement on where this is going. Because I think there is on the one side, a point of view that says the forest should be left to their own devices. And on the other side, there's a point of view that says the forest should be, at least in some instances, actively managed. Mm-hmm. And for all the conversation we've had, neither of those poles, I think, has really moved. So I think we could spend quite a long time, or and try to engage the selectmen and the public at large for quite a long time and end up right back where we are.
Before I call upon Helen, I just want to share with the commission, and this is not official, but I did share the Onion Mountain Management Plan with the new director of the McLean, and asked him to give, and he's a forester from Yale, and young guy. And he thought, yeah, the Onion Mountain Plan was a fine plan, but it was, there were so many different things that they were suggesting. It seemed like to him that they were giving the town a range of options of what they could do, and it seemed unreasonable to do all of them, but they could do some of them, but they were just trying to show the town what was possible. And if that was the case, then, that gave me pause when he said that.
Can you explain that a bit?
He said that there were lots of different things suggested by the plan. He thought to do them all would be a little excessive.
Right, that's, you've repeated that, but I'm trying to understand.
Well, that's what he told
What
me.
what sorts of things are we talking about?
I don't know, this was, he reviewed it, he emailed me back, and that was his thing. It would be nice to have him in to say why he thought that. I mean, I haven't been able to follow up with him on that, but, I thought that was interesting coming from a forester. That, maybe there were some things we didn't need to do. And it's a lot of work for the town to go in and do these things, so, is it really necessary?
So I was going to answer Don, so Don, one reason I thought that people weren't, having a hard time with the sort of the public comment was just how many people showed up at that forum in the library. Compared to the three people we had from open space that are very vocal and know a lot, and us. I mean, the place was packed. There must have been 60, 70 people in there. They're interested.
There were very few of those were regular Simsbury citizens, though, Charles.
Oh, okay.
You had DEEP foresters.
Okay.
You had several of those. You had some out-of-town land trusts, out-of-town
I saw several
commissions.
citizens.
Sure,
There were several citizens, not a great groundswell.
Okay. Well, then it should be easy to have the public comment and go fast.
Oh, I don't deny that it could be easy to have a public comment. I deny that it could be easy to transform that into
An action.
a meeting of the minds.
Helen, you wanted to say something.
If you would allow me to, please.
sir.
You've been so gracious before. I don't want to get into this broad discussion here. What I'd like to do is go back to what Don said. And what was your charge, so to speak? Because I was there. And I think I remember well enough. I always try to look at the record, and as I can bring it to you, I can always be corrected. However, as far as Dr. Faison, two comments. First of all, Don's comment about the forum last year, and it was well represented in the audience and so forth. And Dr. Faison's program is there for you to look at it and read it. It's right on the homepage of the Open Space Committee online, and you can read it. I've read it a number of times already because I always learn something new. He left us with an open-ended process to think. That's what his goal was, I'm sure. But he did concede his personal opinion, and it was to leave it as is and do as little as necessary, that kind of message. But let's go to Don's, if I may, go to Don's comment about what it is that you are supposed to be doing and what I think you are supposed to be charged with. If the program, all right, let's go back. RFP in 2013, 4 specific areas in town, 4 specific forests were part of that RFP, and we have 4 draft plans. In 2014, the staff and the administration brought forward whether or not we should consider doing the Onion Mountain, executing the Onion Mountain plan. And they went through the process, and it was decided to go ahead, put out the bid, get the logger, and so forth. At that point in time, The logger backed out of the contract. It was a contractual issue where the logger had his problems with weekend work, the townspeople, so forth, and so it didn't get done. When it came back to us, the Open Space Committee, in the year 2016, it was, as I recall, well, it didn't get done then, but do you maybe want us to send it out for bids again to see if we can get it done this time around? That's what they said to us. Should we reconsider now and try to send it out again for bid? That was the business part. That was the moment in the year 2016 that we heard so much from the public. We had academic presentations, lots of good information that was now new to us. And it was new conservation science that had not been available to us 2 years before. That was the compelling reason for some of us to step back and say, okay, yes, we spent money, we have this plan. The plan is not for naught. We can still use it for the information it has to give us. But we really are listening or trying to listen to all this new conservation science that is coming before us to be sure that before we go forward with this particular plan, we should step back and reconsider some of the information, have a peer review of the plan. We should do a lot of different things. And it sort of stuck there. And there seemed to be those that felt we should move forward and go ahead and put it out to bid, and then the other side tugging and saying, no, 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 step back, let's rethink this, let's think about the new information and conservation science that we need to look at so that we can really understand what our stewardship responsibilities could and should be. That's where I think you can, I hate to oversimplify things, but it can be just that simple in that you can say to the Board of Selectmen that given that we have had this opportunity to hear all this evidence, new science, new information, given that we have had the opportunity to hear some of it, we want to do a thorough evaluation, and maybe this is the time not to execute the Onion Mountain Plan as stated. Then that gives the opportunity for you and anyone else, all the caregivers, then have to step into place and decide how we're going to consider our overall goals of stewardship of the municipally owned lands that we are responsible for as caretakers. That can happen, but the immediate question, I think the only simple question that you have to answer, are you ready to recommend to the Board of Selectmen, yes, we think you should go ahead and send it out for bid again? Or, no, we think you should wait and give a few reasons why we should wait? And that would answer your charge. Now, if I have not painted the right picture, let me know. But this is the way I see it. This is the way I have been part of it. And this is, I think, a good way to be sure that we have the right outcome. And like your comment earlier, Madam Chair, when you said, the forests are there, they move a lot slowly, more slowly than we do. And I don't need to say you need to hear me instead of her or instead of him. I'm just asking you to look at the narrow job that you might have so that it's not so complicated. And so that opens up the opportunity, like Charlie says, that opens up the opportunity for us to go back and listen again and further study all the new conservation science that has been brought to our attention And this is what those of us who decided to listen to that and say, okay, I am convinced it's compelling enough that I want to step back and take that extra time to go forward. Thank you for letting me speak.
With respect, I have a different recollection of the same circumstances. Because, Helen, I think that the Open Space Committee was not asked to approve sending the Onion Mountain Plan out to bid again. It wasn't within their
That was my point.
jurisdiction to do so.
Do you have the language?
It's not mentioned
Okay.
in the minutes. And the only expert who shows up in the minutes, speaking to the Open Space Committee, is Eric Hansen.
Yes,
He appeared on October 5th of 2016. But there were no other credentialed experts speaking to open space. I understood you to say that open space had been presented a lot of expert information, and
I considered it in academic and, let's say, scientific information that I had to read. I mean, I had to read. I'm not just saying I listened to what someone said. I read, I delved into the subject, I read references, I read books. I came to my understanding by trying to educate myself. I'm not saying that Mr. Hanson came at my request. I had asked that he come because it had been 2-3 years before, and I thought it would be helpful to hear again his, let's say, but then again, I brought up that comment that he made to you. He came to you as well prior to that. And in his commentary to the Conservation Commission, he said, I wish I brought my file with me tonight. He said that there were 4 reasons that he used, he mentioned 4 things that he used to produce that plan. And one of those 4 was that he looked at the town's overall goals for our conservation concerns, or how we had, let's say, a philosophy, or however you want to couch it. And it was obvious to me, we never did that. That's why I brought that to your attention and said the error was made way back when we put the program together in the 90s. We just never, we failed to go that extra step, to do the due diligence, to create that piece of information so that the caretakers that came after had a foundation to go on. That may not have had to be written in stone 10 years later, 20 years later. I'm here 20 years later. You may have to go back and tweak some of the information and some of the program that you had established. I'm not saying it's not to be tweaked, just as I think this particular plan needs to be tweaked, if you were to consider it. It's such information that we need to really review again and anew.
I just wanted to make the point that the commission may conclude that it wants to act on this matter, but to say that we have a charge to do so, I think misstates in process terms where we are.
And I would agree. But so Don, one of the things I was interested in is, we kind of went down this rabbit hole of what the goals were, the philosophy. Because in the early parts, we were having a lot of discussion about, the different tactics, should we cut, how do we deal with invasives, or should we actually go in and cut down like a disease tree? There's a lot of that stuff. If we were to adopt the plan as is, that seems to be where the real debates are. How do we come up with a general feeling for how to do those? How would we force that discussion?
Well, I guess my answer is that I don't think it's the province of this commission to make judgments about trees, individual trees. The town has hired one of the foremost experts in this business in the state, and if it decides to go ahead with the plan, it's relying on him to leave that diseased tree because it's a good host for woodpeckers and the like, take that tree, leave that, take that. You're hiring a surgeon and you don't want to second guess all the steps he's taken. He's given you an outline of his objectives, what he's trying to do, but I don't think we belong in the weeds dealing with the finer points of this.
I like your analogy about using a surgeon, and I was thinking earlier on, I think what we're really asking for is a second opinion before we have the surgery. We're asking for a second opinion from someone else that might have a different philosophy, maybe a non-surgery solution. So I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think that is really one of the sticking points here is we have a surgery plan. Maybe we don't want surgery. That is a possibility.
It is a possibility. It returns to my concern that we will have the do-nothing group on the one side and the do-something group on the other, and a meeting of the minds between the two.
My concern would also be that, we've had people, as we've gone through this process, who have presented themselves as experts who, in my opinion, clearly weren't. And so if we were to have an expert, I think we'd have to be very careful about how that expert is selected.
Well, yeah, but I have sought, another forestry expert, and I was very intrigued by what he had to say.
But he didn't really
But
say
he
anything.
didn't say it to us, and he didn't say it here, and I feel uncomfortable saying that he even said it, because you can't just say, well, somebody told me something. And I don't think it's a do-nothing approach. I think that these lands were there for conservation and recreation. There is conservation maintenance that I think everyone agrees with, invasive plant removal and, removing certain things if it's going to fall on the trail or things like that. But there was disagreement, and we have heard some experts talk about, and we have had books circulated among us that says, that cutting down the tree does disrupt the fungal network of the woods. If you're cutting down the biggest ones in the group, you're cutting out the ones that are most connected. And since they work as a community, is that really the best strategy for the health of the forest? There are lots of different things to consider. One of the things that I know we've had a discussion here about what the Board of Selectmen wants us to do, but I really haven't seen what the Board of Selectmen wants us to do. And I would like to have that clarified for us.
I think Mike Payne's been here a couple times.
Yes, he's been here, and he said, take your time and come up with a good decision.
Well, no, I think he said to try to articulate what the issue is.
Yes.
And send that back.
And I think your letter does that.
You were going to say something, sorry.
Well, and no, I still come back to the problem that there's nothing in the plan. What I understood to be charged from talking with Mike is that whether this plan is still okay and we're okay with it. I don't have any intrinsic difficulty with the plan. The only issues I have heard are that we have a different way of dealing with forests in general and a different approach that we might want to take to them in general, which is different and maybe where we want to go. But I don't think you can go back and tell the selectmen, and you can say that we don't approve it, that we had an expert that came in, he's the one selecting the trees, we didn't just have some guy pick which trees we're cutting down. It's obviously somebody who's knowledgeable and an expert in this opinion, in this field if I do it. So I still am at the point where there's two different pieces of business here that we're attacking and trying to conflate into one.
Yeah, I think too, I think to your point, the philosophy and the goals as they've been kind of articulated and rehashed, it doesn't seem to me that the Onion Mountain Plan conflicts with those goals.
It doesn't.
With the exception of the generation of revenue that is part of the Onion Mountain Plan. But other than that, I don't think that the Onion Mountain Plan conflicts with with any of these
Well-
goals that we've talked through, or
Well,
any of the goals
I
that
think
the,
what Charles was saying, was we really haven't had a discussion about the particular plan, the tactics in the particular, in the Onion Mountain plan. I still would like to have a discussion, why is going in and logging particularly good for soil health? We haven't had that discussion. Not logging is actually better for the soil than going in and logging. And I think Don brought up that really there's not that much discussion. I mean, it's going to be using best management plans for logging, but is it really necessary to do any of the logging? Is it necessary? I mean, this is a whole lot of work for the town.
well-
A lot of people are going to get upset, anytime they see trees cut down, they're going to get upset. I don't mind cutting down trees, I just want to know why they're being cut down.
well, the forester, as the forester said, is that that this is the way to improve the
Yes, but
health of the forest.
He said the health of the forest, but again, and I know I brought it up ad nauseum, which part of what particular?
It's clearly the health of the trees in this case.
It's regeneration of desired species, and it varies stand to stand
It
which
does.
particular species you're regenerating.
But that's clearly the goal, that's clearly the main goal in this one, is the tree species. The regeneration of this, of the tree species, and I think that's the main one. I think it's actually interesting, after all this discussion, the goals are so common. The reason we kind of went down this path to sort of separate them is to basically say, well, you're talking about a goal, or you're talking about how you're gonna achieve it. Because we still, my worry is that even if you say, let's do this, we're just gonna go ahead and say, yeah, you go ahead and send us out, go out and get, bids to go do this, that we haven't fundamentally, within the town, figured out a way to solve these outstanding issues. What is the best way, to manage for invasive species? No one's actually talking about those tactics. There's a lot of different opinion on that. How are you gonna do it?
Yeah, that was in the Onion Mountain Plan, was control of invasive
Well, this-
species, and it was tied to the selective harvesting as well.
Right, but as I see it, you can spend a lot of time cutting down different invasive species and not doing anything in a forest area. So do you want to prioritize just a few? Are we? And I haven't heard that discussion at that level of detail.
We haven't had that discussion.
Well, and we can't here.
Call me a cynic, but it seems to me the answer on the invasive plants outside the forest context is the town doesn't have the money, or doesn't choose to spend the money to deal with that. And it's only in the context of a plan such as this that any significant activity will be taken. Granted, it falls far short of what might be desired on a town-wide basis, but these are tough times, and the resources just are not there to undertake all these things.
Well, and I would agree. And so, is that, so what is the right level of resource to put into, the forest if you're doing this? Should you be, is our plan that we're not going to deal? I guess I still would like somebody to be able to tell me from an overall perspective, are we going to do this or aren't we because of resources? And here's why. Before we go and do it, sort of piecemeal. Which I think is always my claim. Right now, we're attacking this piecemeal because it is a thing in front of us. I think and I think you can make a case for just doing it. But I just don't feel like if we say, go ahead and say, yeah, do it, we're actually solving anything.
Well, I think that the plan, if the plan has been approved by the Board of Selectmen, and so, I think the onus is really on us to demonstrate why it's inappropriate, or why it's wrong, right? Why it should be rescinded.
And I think we did it, and so I think I tried to do it in the philosophy section, which says that in the basic philosophy, we felt that there needed to be public comment on these plans, and that there needed to be a set of, that the plans need to be, analyzed, as a group. If you did those two things, then you were all set. And I think that was one of the discussions we had. And we can turn around and say, no, we don't need to do that. We don't need to analyze them as a group. We can just go ahead and do them piecewise. But that's different from where we were a while ago.
I'd also like to know whether the Board of Selectmen is asking the Inland Wetlands or the Conservation Commission. Because we rarely ever get asked as a Conservation Commission for anything, for our input. I mean, at this point, we thought this was a time that we should be making if not for forest management, what should we be making Conservation Commission comments on?
But
I'd like to know what the Board of Selectmen is expecting, and whether they're really even thinking about this, certainly as much as we are.
I don't think they are. I
I
don't think
don't
they're
think they
expecting
are.
anything. They have not posed a question to us
No.
or given us a charge.
That's what I'm
This is
saying.
on our own initiative.
This is, so I don't know that we have to do something because they're expecting us to do something.
we need to do something because it needs to get off of our.
Our
desk.
table.
Yeah.
I'd like to submit your letter, because I think it explains to the selectmen the difficulty we're having with this. And the thought that we've put into it, and the process that we'd like to see go forward, is that there should be thought and time and effort put in, rather than, let's hire an expert, let's see what he says, let's do what he said. There are many different experts, they don't all have the same opinion.
I'd be happy to
It's not that
submit.
they're bad or good or, inadequate, but it's just, we need some thought. These lands are ours, we need to do good stewardship for them.
You could easily amend the first part of the letter by just saying, we find nothing wrong with the current plan. If you wanted to continue with it as is, there's nothing intrinsically wrong with this. But we feel that if you were to do this other part of the process and look at things holistically, you'd end up with a better outcome. And here's a couple ways of doing it. I'd be happy to say, I think that'd be a great way to get off the table.
I think we still have some reservations with the plan. We don't know the soil management. I mean, there's some,
But we're not
But it's
going
not.
to.
we're not, no.
I don't think that's our charge.
Well,
I mean,
it's-
or
it's-
at least
Well,
in the
yes, it
weeds
is.
of that's what we
Yes.
hired the.
Well, but it has to be somebody's charge, which I guess is my.
I think that's our-
Staff is trying to be
Jamie?
recognized.
Just,
Sorry.
no, I think the conversation's great.
It usually
Yeah.
is.
But-
We don't get anywhere.
And Mike has attempted even in my absence, to keep me abreast of your discussion. I read your meeting minutes, so, I reread through Mike's file on the forest management, reread Onion Mountain and everything, but you have a simple potential issue that is becoming extremely complicated because you're trying to solve 10 different things with one letter. And Charles did a great job trying to bring months of discussions down to 2+ pages to articulate a vision of the commission. And I've been listening attentively and writing a lot of notes, but I don't want to oversimplify it, so please feel free to comment. But the first issue to me is, well, I'm going to almost oversimplify it. And just bear with me as I go back to my sidebar note. You have a forestry management plan for Onion Mountain that's going to result in a timber harvest. Is the plan okay? Yes or no? If the answer is no, you have to articulate why. And a lot of the conversation tonight is, the plan's okay, but we have other goals and objectives outside of this particular timber harvest. Okay, so I think to some of Charles's point, and I want to say if you voted right now, it may be 3-3, which doesn't build consensus. It could be 4-2, but I think, again, I'm just trying to simplify that. You have a plan before you. It's been done by a forester. To Mr. Rieger's point, to Jill's point, as well as the conversations going back and forth, that you could have 10 different foresters before you, and there's going to be 10 potential conclusions, and each one of those conclusions are all debatable by each one of the people bringing forward those conclusions. So it's very difficult in this setting to try and build consensus, because there is a school that says just let the forest do what the forest does, and maybe even there's a fire and the floor canopy and some of the invasives and some of that ground gets taken away and it regenerates again. Even some of the old growth may burn, and if it's not strong and healthy, you may lose that. There's the other school that says there's a thought out there, if we manage it results in a better product. That's debatable also. And to Marjorie's point, there is impact with the mere fact that you're undertaking a timber harvest. Whether you're using a skidder, a forwarder, or a mule team, there is impact. There's less, depending on the latest and greatest best management practices, but there is impact. There is soil compaction. No one's going to argue about that, but if you use a forwarder versus a skidder, there's less with a forwarder and more with a skidder. If you used a mule team, you don't have the compaction of the wheels, but you still are dragging everything. So again, that school's out there. So we go back to the issue of Onion Mountain has a forest management plan. Yes, it was done in 2013. The harvest didn't go through in 2016. If it did, you wouldn't be having this discussion today. So here we are in 2018. Is the plan to do the timber harvest okay? Yes. If it's a no, you should be able to articulate why it's a no. Now to the global issue, to Charles's point. Just because Onion Mountain's okay, is it okay in the global picture? And I think that's what you're struggling with, is you're not clear that if I do Onion Mountain and get a little revenue from that, is that being done to better manage another property elsewhere? Or is that revenue to the general fund? Again, I'm the director of planning and development, and we get building permit fees, which can be extensive at times, but that goes in the general fund. I would like to live in a world where I get to keep that, but along with that philosophy, the tax collector would get to keep everything they collect in the town, because they actually get all of the money that comes in, but that comes into the general fund and gets redistributed. But you're also, to Don's point, you're balancing limited resources. So you have a particular plan for a particular property. I think there's potentially some consensus that you're not really offended by that particular plan and that particular location at this type of cut. It's not a hard cut.
No.
I mean, I've seen money grabs before. I'm in another municipality where there's a potential for a money grab. That's a very different discussion. But this is a slight, but I don't, if you make a determination, as some have suggested, that Onion Mountain's okay, but as you move forward, as the Board of Selectmen, or as the Conservation Commission, or the Open Space Committee for the town, we want you to be conscientious of a much larger picture, and that's not the management of a property exclusive of the others that we're also managing. Because I work with municipalities where you do a hard cut on one piece to finance the removal of invasives on another that doesn't have the timber on it to generate the revenue to deal with those issues at that property.
Yeah,
So again, I think it's simple and then global, and if you can get through the simple, I think a well-articulated level to say, okay, we may be okay with this, but we want you to look at a much globaler picture as you undertake next steps and next actions.
So just a couple of things that we're thinking. Thank you for giving us fresh eyes on this and for keeping up with it. I don't think it's an idea that the plan is bad. I think it's whether the plan is necessary. Is it necessary for the town to do the plan? And then also the funding, if it, it has not, I know I brought this up a couple of times. Will the money go into the general fund? I'm sure it will. Will it then be earmarked for the plans that we think it's going to be planned? Because that was in the RFP, that this would be, to generate some funds. It didn't say, the idea was it was for trail maintenance and this and that and the other thing, but will it be? And and we also had the question, should our forests be the only things that are expected to pay for themselves for the maintenance in their forest, whereas other land use issues aren't necessarily required to do that?
And
Why
I
are
think
our
those
forests?
are all great points,
Yeah.
Marjorie, that is
Yeah,
part of
I-
that global overriding.
Which is
I-
things that I think we need to bring before the Board of Selectmen
Yeah, I mean,
for
I-
discussion.
Yeah, I felt that the consensus was really that the best approach would be for the town to fund improvements out of the general fund directly.
Well, it
on
would,
an
but I
annual
mean, we
basis.
know that sometimes money gets into the general fund, it does not get allocated towards things.
And it's not the Board of Selectmen's
No.
province to decide that, it's the
No.
Board of Finance.
So the
It makes it
logging
that
may
much more
go on
difficult.
and with the idea that this would fund things, but it may never fund anything.
I like your logic,
Okay.
I like your logic towards trying to deal with whether we thought the report was yes or no, but I actually think it's not binary. It's yes, no, necessary, or even slightly optimized. I think one of my biggest concerns is that, I mean, it's not that you're trying to look for the absolute optimal solution, but I'm worried that it's, we don't have enough details yet on how they're gonna do a bunch of these different goals. They had 8 goals in there, 7 goals that we agreed on. They have enough detail in there how it was actually gonna execute. So I think if you go back and let's say you have those 4 choices, is it yes, no, is it right, is it properly optimized, or is it necessary? And that might be the decision you have to go back and talk to the selectmen about. Because if it's yes or no, it changes in that context.
I
But to my
disagree.
point,
Okay.
if you're
I
saying
disagree.
no, why?
Yeah, I
Why?
disagree. I think it's a yes or a no, that if we say no, don't do this, we have to tell them why.
Well-
And and to me, the answer of it's not necessary is because you disagree with the forest management plan in general, that you think you shouldn't have hands-on at all, which is a place to be, but that's a decision to make. And if we want to go forward with a different plan, and say, as you go forward, here's a process that we think you need to look, and here's our overreaching goals and what we're concerned that this is not, that in isolation is fine, that may not be addressing all of the properties in Simsbury, then that's something that's part 2 and not in the initial question and in the initial answer. But, I mean, unless we can point to, if the answer is we don't think it's necessary because we don't think you should log at all, that's an answer, but that's a no.
Right, so.
But I don't, I mean, that's not where I get to, but that is an answer, but it's still a yes or a no.
It's that I want to know why we're doing it. Is it to generate funds that may or may not come back to do the things we hope to do? Is it for the
I think
forest
it's
health?
for the
Then-
goals that are articulated in the plan, I would say.
Yes, but I mean, water quality, I mean, that's a goal in the plan, but it doesn't address how thinning out the trees is going to improve water quality.
So, Jill,
How will crossing wetlands for
I
getting
agree with
roads?
That piece of the
Just
plan
bring that
wasn't
level.
specific to address water.
Go up to it.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
that's a
true.
goal.
But
There's
other-
nothing in the
I think-
plan that talks about
And that's
water
fine.
quality.
I'll agree with you. It's just.
I mean-
Yeah.
The only
Removing
part of the
excavated
plan
trees
that
is not
talks
gonna do
about
that.
water quality, because there's no surface water body on Onion Mountain except for wetlands.
Wetlands, yeah. But
So the plan, and to the extent that it addressed water quality, it recommended not logging right next to the wetlands.
yeah, but some of there are going to be crossings.
He talked about, he made a presentation to us about the crossings he would have to make, the buffer he was allowing around the
Yeah.
vernal pool. That's all water quality.
I know, no, that's, but not logging would be preferable to crossing. I mean, that's, I mean, it's a
Right.
trade-off, but, making a crossing through the wetlands is not an improvement of water quality, but that was one of the goals. I mean, yes, there's best management practices for it. So, yeah, the easiest thing would just be say, yeah, go ahead and do it.
So what's our options right now? I think
Madam Chair, I think in the discussion, you're not comfortable just saying yes. It's yes with a paragraph or 2
Exactly.
after it. And you're close to potentially being there with what Charles prepared.
I think we could
Maybe it-
also say, we would be comfortable going ahead with portions of it, because there may be some things, I mean, I'm thinking of my discussion with the forest manager, perhaps, there are some things we don't need to do in that particular plan. But we haven't had that discussion.
Well, yeah, if we wanted to actually go down that path and say, this is the modifications that we would want to see, or do we want to talk about, then we ought to just say, look, at the next meeting, let's get a couple people in here and decide, these are the 3 things. And that we want to talk about to file, to flesh these parts out, and then send it back with those recommendations. But we were having a hard enough time doing that in this forum.
I know.
And so we kind of are kicking it off to a better forum to do that in.
I come back to Jamie's point, that if we brought in 10 foresters, you'd get 12 opinions. We have one coherent plan. I don't think we have the expertise, and I don't think those 10 foresters have the perspective to pick it apart. I mean, I regard it as a coherent, good quality management plan. If I were writing the letter would say, we understand that the Onion Mountain plan didn't get done because of a problem with the logger. We'd like to see that problem solved and see that plan go forward. We would be eager to see the marking of the trees revised because time has passed. We'd be eager to remind the forester of his stated intention of being careful about soil impacts, and would suggest that he think about forwarder or other techniques in doing that. We would suggest that he, as he looks over the trees one more time, that he be mindful of opportunities to foster old growth characteristics where that can be done. And so we'd like to see it go forward, and we would suggest to the Board of Selectmen that reconsideration be given to the weekend problem, if that is what would solve the ability to get it done. Because, people do have leaf blowers and things going all the time, and little weekend noise in the woods is not the end of the world. But as we think about further such plans, we've had long and very spirited discussions here about a lot of aspects of this, and we do think that if the board is of a mind to go forward with other such plans, that there's a need for further discussion involving as much of the public as is interested. That's the letter I'd sent.
I would, if I may, I would add to that too. I appreciated the clarification that we got from the forester that the flagging he did would not have changed if his goal were to emphasize generating revenue from the harvest. And I would just like to see that same approach carried through to subsequent years. So he's flagged only the first kind of phase of the plan, right? And so for subsequent phases, that same approach and priority to the other goals in the plan be given.
I just have one, when we say we want old growth characteristics, I'm just confused to how cutting down the larger trees that have a head start towards that to allow the younger trees to grow up.
The plan doesn't specify that the older trees are cut.
The ones with the larger canopy that freed up the others.
In fact, the plan specifies that some of the largest trees be allowed to grow and get larger.
Good, I hope so. All right, and, then there's always the problem, it's to preserve the health of the trees, but when you knock one down, you end up damaging some of the others. But those are the problems with that. We can move ahead if we move ahead with this one plan, just have discussions with the others. I just don't want it to set, the sort of the process that, we approve this one, we'll get another one before us, done by a reputable forester, and we have to take his plan because he's a reputable forester. I mean, that's and we do that for each one. We could do, it's.
If we want to add to the letter the concerns that we have and what we would like them to bring to us, or we would like included in the next plan, or how we would like the next, if we want to say we would like all of the plans to come in a package so that we can understand them more holistically, that's a different point. Or at least we can ask the selectmen to think about them, that we think that they should come before us as a total package, so it's more holistic. That's, but those are guidelines that can be added in the second thing.
We had that discussion earlier about, because we look at these plots individually, and what we should be looking is where they are in context with other plots, because there are a lot of managed forests in town.
Again, you have a unique opportunity because typically we're on the regulatory side. We used to have more ability to regulate timber harvesters prior to a certain case in a town in northeastern Connecticut. But in that regulatory hat, you are looking at each one in isolation, and you only get to look at the best management practices. And I've seen a lot of good forest management plans and timber harvest plans go awry by the operator in the field who decides this border was broken, so he used his skidder. He decided to use corduroy versus a temporary bridge. He decided to not use corduroy because there was an old road down through the brook and up through the brook. So even the best plans can go awry without management at the local level of the ultimate harvest. But again, you have this rare opportunity in a community with your holdings to look at the totality of multiple parcels and the effect of, maybe at some point in time someone would discuss a slightly harder cut somewhere. So long as, Marjorie, to your point, if you had a lockbox and you knew that that hard cut would be going towards a goal of better managing another property.
Or I wouldn't even.
It's a better evaluation
I wouldn't even go
tool.
with the lockbox. I'd say go for a hard cut if you want to create thicket habitat for a particular species of birds that you've identified that you want thicket habitat as opposed
So
to
I think
something
some of your
else.
discussion
I'm not
is that
against a
in
hard
future
cut.
management plans, if you put out a new RFP, we'll take back 2013, and Jerry Toner was charged as Parks and Cultures Director to put out a RFP for a forest management plan, and then maybe in a couple weeks you could discuss, what are the 10 things you would want, maybe in addition to a normal plan? Or, and maybe not in addition, it's just a little more clarification of water quality. Because again, there's a temporary impact for that skidder trail. The corduroy does go in the brook, but then the corduroy comes out, so there's a temporary, it heals,
Yeah.
but during that disturbance, there is a potential water quality issue. Temporary in nature, I'll let it be, but there is an impact. You can't say there's no impact. But I think you're talking about, don't lose sight of, if you choose, and you're deciding this, I'm not interjecting my opinion for yours, but if you decide to move forward on a recommendation, that you also, in your discussion, don't lose sight of, if a plan were to be RFP'd 2 years from now, 6 months from now, even sooner, that you want to make sure that this is included or that isn't included. There's a broader discussion or explanation of specific topics, and you look at it in the totality of all of the properties that the town is
And
managing.
not just all of our properties, the totality of the forest in general in Simsbury.
For which, if someone decides to do a timber harvest on their property, you have no regulatory authority over it.
Absolutely not. But
So-
it does add to the diversity of the forest in
But
Simsbury.
it's still part of the discussion.
Yes,
I
it
think
is.
it's still, your point is, it's still part of the discussion. Okay.
All right. So can we task Charles and Don to work together on, well, what are we going to do? What are we going to do?
So I would be happy to say, if we would approve, we could send this back and say, this plan would be okay to go forward, the kind of discussion we had. But I would wanna add that I would wanna see the forester come and give a public talk, about the actual implementation of this plan. What's he gonna do? Make sure the public has a chance to listen to that, comment on it, and then you've at least achieved a part of your main goal, was to make sure people understand those pieces, ask those questions for that implementation, and then we can put the rest of it going forward. I just don't, I think you would learn a lot from that part of the process. I again think the only reason we're pushing this thing forward is because because there's been a process set in place. There hasn't been like a huge investment other than a lot of people's time. We've characterized things well. They haven't been able to say why we really need to do this. There's lots of, we want to improve the forest health. There's lots of other ways to do that. It may come back, this is the best way to do it. I just don't feel like we've had that forum to have that discussion. We've had one person tell us a very good idea about how to do it. I guess that's my big concern, so why keep going?
So I don't think we're keeping going. I think
Yeah.
we're approving this plan in it because we don't have, we don't see fundamentally any whole intrinsic issues with it. I think that this piece two is that we're doing this. We know you have other plans that you want to come before us. We would ask you to think about sending to us those together so that we can think about the forest in Simsbury holistically and an approach that way. Here's the things we're concerned about. We also want public comment on those when they come before us too, because I understand they're not as far along as the original Onion Mountain Plan.
Let's be clear, though, that these things do not come before us.
That,
We may
Yeah.
venture an opinion about it, but they do not come before us for any,
right, right.
And how, what process will it be for the next plan? They are also done by, reputable forester. There's, who will be the group that will say, no, we want to look at this holistically? I mean, there's no
So
process.
you're hoping that it's the Board of Selectmen. They will take your letter to heart, and they will say, aha,
And they will
that's
set up a
right.
group?
But that's what, not even the
They're
group,
not
that they
gonna
come
have it.
before us
They're
there,
not
and
gonna
here's
do
the
it.
questions that you should be thinking about when you're designing an RFP, when you're designing the forest management plan, that these are the issues that we want to see addressed, or the concerns we would have in a forest management plan overall. It's a more detailed letter generally, probably, than what is even on there. The part two can be even broader if we want it to be, than that. But I think the part one is that this plan is a reasonable forest management plan for Onion Mountain.
Perhaps.
I think you're talking about better, more, or expanded information to help someone make a decision as you move forward.
And who?
If we look,
And, yeah,
the
yeah.
who is sometimes driven by policy, whether it's the town manager who will make that final decision, whether it's open space making recommendation to the Board of Selectmen who authorize the town manager to proceed. But I think what you're talking about is there are some outstanding issues that aren't necessarily clarified in this type of plan before us. If we move forward, we'd like to see a little more information so that it is vetted or explored by someone. The someone, I can't tell you who that is tonight.
And the question is, should we do that also for Onion Mountain? If we're going to, thinking of doing that for the other ones, why can't we use that process for this plan? I mean, there is no hurry.
Or push it, if you're not doing Onion Mountain, you're actually pushing this to the forefront. Someone's going to have to solve this in order to go forward. I think, or at least talk about it to go forward. And I think that's my biggest concern. I'm afraid that if we were to say that, well, there's nothing intrinsically terrible to plan, like they're not clear cutting or anything that would cause a lot of people to go bad, but we haven't solved these other issues, you're just, you're not gonna change the process at all. We're not necessarily going to see the other plans when they come forward. There's no reason for us to see them.
In fact, less likely we're going to see it after we've
Well, yeah, it's probably we'll never see them.
slowed it down.
Yeah.
I disagree. So I think if you come back with a plan and you actually let the process move forward, that they can do work on Onion Mountain, and you give them a blueprint of what you want to see the next time, and just, I think you're right, if it goes back with a very broad, we need a forest management plan that is sort of very general and vague and aspirational, but doesn't have any specifics, then you're right, we'll never see anything again. But if you are specific about what the answers to the questions that you want answered, the clarifications that you want, and what you would like to see in a management plan addressed, then there is a record that the selectmen will have, the town manager will have, and so that as these things go forward, even if they don't come before us, they will hopefully include, and should, now that these things are of record, include those things as they're going forward. But now you've moved process forward, and there's process going, and there is something that needs to be read and addressed.
Again, from my perspective, being on the regulatory side for years, that even in a timber harvest plan that was submitted, there used to be a line on the map that said Crossbrook here. Those have evolved over the years where we, through experience said, well, what does Crossbrook here mean? How are you doing it? What's the methodology? So just as a timber harvest plan can mature and we can get better information, there's nothing to say that the timber management plan can have expanded or better information if you're asking the right questions.
No, I think we figured out that we can do that. The question, you ask better questions. The question, I think, before us is, do we send a note back somehow that says, this current plan as is can be acted on? And I'm thinking that we're probably at the point where you have to take a vote on that, and then the group can say, okay, given whatever this vote says, then we'll figure out what the right letter is to go back, and then we just move forward. Because I'm not seeing that we're gonna be able to change, there's not new more information that's gonna come that's gonna change that mind. And so I would, if people think that, we basically say whether we're gonna let this go back, then we can have that as a vote, and then we can decide what to do about the final letter. So if people agree, I'll make a motion, but I don't want to cut off anybody.
I'll make a motion.
So I'll make a motion that we take a vote on whether we believe we should, in communicating back to selectmen, that we recommend that the plan be executed as is. And it's either yes or no. So I didn't say that well, so I'll go back. Don, you try it again.
All right. The motion is to approve communicating to the Board of Selectmen that the Conservation Commission is of the view that resuscitating the implementation of the Onion Mountain Management Plan should be pursued with some little embroidery about being mindful of soil and mindful of opportunities for fostering old growth characteristics, and with encouragement to try to solve the weekend work conundrum.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
you do meet, if I may interject,
yes.
you do meet in 2 weeks. You're trying to formulate a motion. Would it be germane if the motion is formulated and you
Yes.
potentially can
Yeah, I
vote on
think
it in
yes,
2 weeks?
yeah.
Just so
I
you.
love it.
Well,
There's
there's something about embroidery.
Well, I know.
I think, Don, you make a good point, though, about really solidifying that language on your term embroidery.
Oh, no, this is stuff we've talked about. This is, just
Sure.
using a forwarder, not a skidder, if that seems to be the right thing to do.
Well, we had, I was gonna wait till the second because we were gonna have some discussion, but I was saying that you had brought up that we wanted to see more information in the plan about the soil erosion. I know you had submitted something.
I don't think that's what I said. I said, I thought
You had
that
submitted something at the last meeting,
That-
the
that the-
presentation he'd made.
the forester should be encouraged to be mindful of avoiding soil impacts, whether by the timing of the work, by the use of a forwarder,
Well,
not a
that's-
skidder, or such other techniques as, in his judgment, were the best way to go.
That sounds better.
Okay, that's embroidery.
Yes, I know, but it
All right.
sounds better in a motion than.
Okay.
I'll second the motion.
Did I finish it? I guess I
Is
did.
there anything else we need to add?
Did anyone write it down?
I'm gonna, Madam Chair, I'm gonna try and read it back. I do have some holes in it, Don, so just, motion to vote to communicate to the Board of Selectmen that the plan be executed as, executed as reviewed by the Conservation Commission.
Let me try again, Jamie.
Yeah,
All right.
again, there's a gap, but again, necessitating,
That the Conservation Commission communicate to the Board of Selectmen that it recommends that the implementation of the Onion Mountain Management Plan be resuscitated. And that in the course of that, the forester be encouraged to revise and review and revise as necessary the markings he's made in the forest. That in doing so, he be encouraged to look for opportunities for fostering old growth characteristics. that the forester further be encouraged to avoid soil impacts, whether by timing of the work, by the use of forwarder rather than a skidder, or such other techniques as he deems optimal. And that the Board of Selectmen be encouraged to try to work around the problem of weekend work by the logger, which had derailed the process first time out. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Is there any discussion?
So the,
Any discussion?
Is there, I'm sorry.
Any discussion?
yes. So I was just wondering, Don, I'm not, and the motion is fine, but I was just wondering if you could just be a little more, if there's any advantage having more generalized to say, we approve this plan with some small, with some, I don't know, small modifications, we can just list them, but I'm fine with just approving it the way, or voting on it the way you're saying it.
I tried to say embroidered, and you didn't like that.
No, I'm fine.
I like this.
Okay, I'm fine.
And recognizing that the letter, which is the communication, can have
A lot more stuff.
Oh, this is just
more written on.
paragraph one.
Right. This is just what are we gonna do as the finding here, and then we're gonna talk about how to incorporate it into the
That's right.
letter.
We can add whatever we.
Sure.
So as long as it goes along with the letter. Yeah. Okay. All those in favor?
All those, you're talking about all those in favor of doing this?
Well, if that,
Yeah.
well, yes,
And
that's
that's
what we had the motion,
Yep.
yeah.
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays?
Nay.
Nay. All right, well, we will submit that.
Okay, but, so at least we've done something. So
We're
I'm,
not submitting that, that's
No.
on the shelf to be incorporated into.
Into the letter.
into the letter. So now, having made that decision as a group, so the question is that, how do we incorporate that in the letter? So we can either try to do it right now, or Don and a couple of us can put it back together.
No, not
I'll
now.
vote against that
No.
motion.
Okay.
No.
May Charles and I legally talk about this as a subcommittee, Jane? Jamie?
If you are tasked as a subcommittee of the commission, you can meet, but we have to notice it and you have to hold it in a public place. If you are tasked,
We don't need Hartford Current style, like a public
No.
meeting here. No, just.
let us know when you're gonna meet in the town hall. We'll provide a meeting space for you. I need 24 hours notice and we post notice with the town clerk.
You comfortable with that, Charlie?
Fine, I'm just trying to think of, is there, I'm worried about my schedule. Is there an alternative where we do it via email back and forth? Although
I
talking to me
think
better.
what we said, we had to send things to Mike.
Yeah.
And both of you could
Yeah.
see it and then comment on it.
Let's try to do it this way, Don. Let's try to do it that way and we'll see what we can get.
Mueller will get a hold of the emails and, it's
No,
on top of the band.
that's.
So just to clarify, the commission's gonna work with staff on drafting a letter.
Yes.
Do we need a motion to form the subcommittee?
Anybody else want to play?
Are you formulating a formal subcommittee
We
or are
will do a
you-
subcommittee for the letter because drafting as a whole is
Okay.
atrocious. So, I'd like a motion to form a subcommittee.
I'll make a
of
motion
Dawn
for
and-
subcommittee.
and Charles,
Second?
all right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, and we'll see the letter at, hopefully,
Mhm.
schedules allowing, at the next meeting.
Yep.
All right. All right, good. And, Susan?
I don't know if you might allow anyone else to make a comment or what you were doing, but my teenager had my car. So I just wanted to make a couple of points. I don't have a spreadsheet with me, but I could send it to Mike, I guess, or Jamie to forward it. But in terms of the money, so you were talking again tonight about the money from logging, and a long time ago I talked to the state forester about the amount of money they would get for Masako, which is across the street from Onion Mountain. And I know we were going to get $13,700 for the piece of Onion Mountain that was going to be harvested. And I made very conservative estimates based on a 20-year cycle, which typically it's longer than that. And taking all the costs into account over a 20-year cycle, the estimates were very consistent between the state bid and the town bid. So it would really be about $12 to $15 per acre per year. So that's why it's not that much money. We raised $3 million for the Ethel Walker Woods. So that's why I think we should do it if we think it's a good idea to do it. Because I'm very sure that if we're talking about getting that amount of money, we could get people to donate that amount of money rather than feel like we had to cut down the forest to get that amount of money. So I just think we should put that on the table, that this is not, the estimates are very consistent and that's about the amount of money we could get. And I put in like what's the maximal area we could cut. I didn't include wetlands, I included all the parcels and averaged it all together, so that's the amount. The other thing is, you know, in terms of the Onion Mountain project, when I first knew about it, initially I didn't think anything when I saw it on the agendas. What really caught my eye was actually being out there and seeing the trees that were marked, and I didn't want something to happen that the town didn't want to happen. So then I found out there was a plan. I right away, even before that, I called Canton to see what they were doing. I called the state to see what they were doing on their land so we could figure out what was going on. One thing that's important about the area is it's a trap rock ridge, and it's the only trap rock ridge in the state that doesn't have a trail on its spine, so there's all kinds of special plants and things like that there. I knew Canton wasn't cutting theirs. I found out the state was cutting Misako. And one thing that's missing in both this plan and in the state plan is this is the major east-west wildlife corridor. So I'm not sure if cutting it is good for a wildlife corridor. It's not good for a wildlife corridor, but I think that's something we should figure out. And also, if there are these two pieces of that wildlife corridor, Misako, which is 80 acres, and this piece of Onion Mountain, that is the big east-west connection. Is it damaging to have both? They're going to be cutting Misako like any day now. They have the equipment out there. So is it bad to cut them both within a short amount of time in terms of keeping that corridor an active wildlife corridor? And then the other thing is, a while ago, this has been going on since open space and whatever, was, you know, I'm on the environmental leader list, and I contacted a forest organization that I just knew from the list. It's not someone, I didn't know the person there, I didn't know the organization, called Highstead, and talked to them, and I said, well, we have these forests, we want to do the right thing, we're not sure, you know, if we need to do this, etc. And so I got a full peer review of the plan, and it brings up a lot of the things that you've been bringing up in your discussions, so that's why I didn't really bring it, but I think that, you know, I've had it for 1.5 years, but maybe you just might want to look at it to see what are some of the issues that a wildlife biologist or an ecologist might bring up about this. And I also want to say that I did call around about Eric Hansen right away when I saw that he had done the plan, and he has an excellent reputation. So no one has ever said that we never tried to impugn his reputation, but he's a forester that we hired to do a job, which is to manage the forest using sustainable forestry. The question is, do we need to do that? Maybe we do. I'm not even against it. I just wanted to have all the information to make the right decision. And when I asked the town to get what Mike actually found for us finally last week, like what are the deeds for these properties? What do we have on these properties? A lot of information is out there. And I was told we didn't have staff time to do that. So it's a little bit frightening to me that this has been going on for 2 years, and only just at the last meeting do we even look at what are the restrictions and deeds and things on those properties. So I'm, you know, anyway, I just think it's gotten kind of muddled. But, you know, maybe I could send my math and we could understand that. I could turn over this peer review if you want to take a look at that. Okay.
I don't think anybody's thinking that there's any money really coming for the cutting. So
Okay.
That's not
Well, I
what's
heard
driving.
Jamie saying a lot about money and timber harvest and stuff like that, so that's why anyway.
I think it would be interesting to see the,
I just think we could really get, you know, donations for, if we really were in this desperate of a situation, but we should know how much money we're talking about.
We had
I
the,
think we're doing it
we had the
for-
discussion, we don't even know if the money that's raised from the timber harvest will actually get to anything for the projects that
Right.
were
I think the main
suggested.
tactical decision is whether, the goal of this particular plan was to improve the forest health. And the plan is self-consistent with that, within that, that philosophy. That yes, if you you can come in and surgically do things, you'll improve the forest health. And then we've had other people saying, well, no, there's other ways of doing it.
Right.
But I think we have at last at least tried to push the pieces together, and we'll keep going. Because it's a big discussion, as you said, a lot of discussion on this.
But we look forward to seeing this, because there's more discussion to be had, not
Right,
necessarily,
right.
on this.
So we'll move forward, and we'll get the letters out. Don and I, the opposite, not the opposite ends, but some of this, we'll get to the middle, and we'll get some.
I also think this would be a good thing to discuss within the context of the larger open space management plan, which is, I think, going to be moving forward soon. So it seems like that would be, they might have charrettes, they might have, a process that we could participate in, like we did with, other issues in town. And I guess when Oracle was purchased, there was a big public process about what people wanted to do with the Simsbury Farms property. We've never had that with our forests. We never had that with the Ethel Walker Woods after we went through 10 years and 5 votes and all that money. I just think that's there's a real gap there.
Well, I think one of the things we're gonna try to do in the letter is try to get those pieces out so we can move forward on that. So I think the goal is to get it out of here and have some other people take a look at it.
Jamie, we know there has been discussion of an open space management plan. Whose jurisdiction would that fall in? I've seen an opinion from the town attorney which suggests that it's not open space because their purview is really advising on the acquisition of open space, not on its management. And I don't think it's us, because we only have management responsibility for open space if it's been officially designated to us, which it has not. So this sounds like a town manager area to oversee the process that is being looked for the public involvement in the open space
Again,
plan.
early discussions, but it potentially could be at the town manager level, delegated to a department. Historically, it's been in Parks and Culture. It could continue along that route, but as I mentioned, Maria has been on board for 6 weeks and a day, and we're vetting a lot of issues with her and through her to find out how all these pieces fall together in a new form of government, which is new to the town. So everybody's learning their new roles and evaluating what their roles and responsibilities are under the new form of.
Yeah, I don't mean to rush anybody, but
No.
it's been clear from our discussion that we think that lots of public involvement is a good thing, but it's also pretty clear to me a priori that this is not the forum for it,
Right.
nor is open space, so.
No. So.
All right. I'm just, is there any correspondence or anything?
The only correspondence that I had that was put in my packet today for you was the letter from Mr. Ryan, which is already in your packet.
If I can venture a view about Mr. Ryan's letter, I don't find it convincing. His argument appears to be that because the fellow who is spraying the mosquitoes has a state license, that it is within the statutory exemption for mosquito control for activities conducted by or under the authority of the DEEP. I plan to drive home from this meeting under my driver's license, which is issued by the Department of Motor Vehicles. I don't think anybody would seriously consider that I was doing that as an activity conducted by or under the authority of the DMV. Moreover, if Mr. Ryan's reasoning were correct, anytime a licensed applicator applied a pesticide, it would be exempt, in which case there would never be jurisdiction for a local commission, and that plainly was not the conclusion that Janet Brooks reached in her article.
Madam Chair, if I just may respond, it is on my list to be reviewed with council and the
Good.
town manager
Good.
as we proceed.
Excellent. All right, so maybe we can discuss it at the next meeting. All right, good. All right, any other correspondence?
Okay.
Announcements? All right, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for having me tonight.